And we are live. Let's see. So this is the first time stream for us. Let's see if we can get a confirmation if this is working.
Yep, I see it on YouTube now.
Oh, looks like it's working. I got confirmation that we're going out to YouTube. So if anybody is watching, feel free to post in the chat and let us know you're there. Give us a thumbs up if everything's working. Let's see if we're going out to X. And it looks like we are going out to X. Let me repost this. Cool. All right. So this is episode 1 of what we're calling the Accessibility Checker Changelog, where we will be talking through what's new in the Accessibility Checker. I'm just going to give it a little bit of time to let people join and make sure that the streams are up and working. Let's see. Looks like, okay, so we got confirmation from Amber that things are working. Awesome. Cool. Well, if you're joining in, feel free to ask a question anytime. This is going to be kind of a free-flowing live stream where we can field questions as they come in, and so feel free to chime in. So just want to say welcome to the Accessibility Checker Changelog. So I'm here with I'm Steve Jones. I'm CTO of Equalize Digital, and I'm here with William. William, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I will. I write the code that Steve asked me to. I mostly break things. We'll see how long it takes for me to break something on this stream.
All
I might have
right.
just broken something already.
It's okay. It's okay to break things as long as you know how to fix them. So we're here talking about the Accessibility Checker. Some of you may know what the Accessibility Checker plugin is, and some may not. But for those that don't, the Accessibility Checker is an automated accessibility scanning plugin to help your WordPress become and stay accessible. The Accessibility Checker is a suite of plugins at this point. We have the Accessibility Checker free plugin, which you can get from our website at equalizedigital.com/accessibility-checker. We have a premium plugin, which we call Accessibility Checker Pro, which adds in many premium features such as full site scanning. And then we have a few add-on plugins that you get at different levels of the premium plugin. We have an audit history plugin, which will track your issues over time and allow you to export that to CSV files. We have a multi-site add-on, which will allow you to manage all of your subsites, the licensing for all of your subsites in one place at the network level, as well as many other settings. And we have an export add-on, which allows you to export a lot of the data that the Accessibility Checker creates into CSV files. So welcome to the first episode. Kind of what we're aiming for, what William and I are aiming for, is kind of a casual kind of user and developer focused conversation around accessibility and around the Accessibility Checker and around being WordPress product creators. So this first episode we're calling Languages, Landmarks, and Links. So we'll cover what's kind of new in the plugin and we're take a look under the hood, and we'll do some demoing, and we're kind of preview what's coming next for the Accessibility Checker. So first up, languages. So in a recent release of the plugin, not the latest, but I think two versions back, we release translations for the plugin. We are now translating the plugin into 32 languages. And this kind of came out of our trip to WordCamp EU, and this kind of sprung from us being an accessibility plugin and the importance of accessibility, which is including everybody and making the web accessible to everybody, and that actually extends out into translations as well. If you'd like to kind of get a deep dive on translations, let me pull up a screen here. If you'd like to get kind of a deep dive into why and a little bit of how we implemented translations in the plugins, I would point you over to our latest episode of Accessibility Craft, where you can hear Chris and Amber and I talk through that a bit. Why we drank not beer. It's not beer. So give that a listen. So let's jump in. So languages, William.
Yes.
So we implemented. We were kind of tasked with at the spur of the moment, which doesn't always fall into our dev workflow with these translations, and we kind of set out to maybe spend a couple days translating the plugin, and we actually ended up spending 2 or 3 weeks on it.
A couple of days very quickly became a couple of weeks. A couple of days we had all the translations available. It turns out that it's quite difficult to integrate translations into WordPress plugins, or it's more difficult than it should be to keep it updated.
Right. And I mean, and why is it important to, from a development standpoint, to have these systems where it's updated? Can't you just translate them and you're good to go?
You can just translate it and you're good to go if you don't want to make any changes to your plugin ever again. I've learned that it is very easy to just want to tweak a line of code that includes a string. You might want to update some help text. Almost every single release, there is a minor reword of some string that benefits users immensely, but is a real pain in the neck for keeping the translations updated. Particularly when you're relying on other users doing the translations. If you are looking to the community to do your translations, every single time you make a string change, you have to wait on someone, doing the translation. You have to wait on a PT manager going through, approving the translations. It's not a fast process.
Right. And you really don't want to create like barriers for your dev team where they feel like they don't want to change the string because they know then it's going to cause an issue for.
Yes.
Yeah. So we built kind of a continuous integration, a workflow that kind of allows our development process to automatically translate these strings. So the WordPress.org has GlotPress, which allows you to utilize people contributing strings, translated strings to your plugin. But as I stated, we have our free plugin, which is hosted on WordPress.org and has the benefit of GlotPress. But we have 4 other plugins that are premium plugins that don't have that ability. So how do you translate to 32 languages when you don't speak 32 languages?
Yeah, you just make it up as you go, really. Realistically, there is services out there that can perform these translations. The service that we have picked is AI backed, which, the quality of the translations is potentially questionable, but having no translations is horrible for all these users that don't speak English. So yeah, so this is the tool here, PTC.
Yep.
It comes from WPML, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Who yeah, they provide AI backed translations, apparently better than humans.
Yeah.
That, you know, I question that, but that's their claim.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bold claim, right? Better than human translations, and
Yep.
so like I don't think we didn't think it would be wise to just translate it with an AI translation without any validation. So at WordCamp EU, yeah, Amber Hines, our CEO, kind of shopped it around a little bit. We had a little bit of a pre-release put together of the plugin that she kind of demoed for a few people to get some feedback, and the feedback seemed to be fairly positive, and that they were able to read the translations. There didn't seem to be anything funny or weird, or and sometimes even with translations, things could be inappropriate, right? Um, so so the question is, is that good enough that you've done a little bit of validation, and as the plugin moves on, you're validate it more and more, right, with more people using it. And if anybody brings up an issue with it, we do have a glossary where we can actually modify these strings and stuff out even outside the plugin, so when the translations are generated, that it pulls the correct string. So we wanted to provide these translations, and AI gets us very far in that, to where like even months ago or a year ago, we couldn't do anything close to this. And our hard thing with the WordPress.org hosted plugins is that these are volunteer based translations, and you've got to get uh, you've got to get people to contribute their time to translate those. And our free plugin had been translated into a handful of languages, uh, most notably German. We had most coverage in that. But what this does, so this allows us to have a unified system of translating, and something that we're not dependent uh, on contributors giving their time, which a lot of people have limited time these days. And our plugin is quite large and has thousands of strings that need to be translated. So we'll continue to test this, and we'll continue to get feedback on these translations moving forward. Let's see, we have some comments here. Let's see, Dave, AI translations better than humans, possibly. Yeah, I think you can bring this up on the screen. Let's see. So this is my first time running a restream, but yeah, there we go. Possibly, yeah.
Awesome.
I think so far we've had a lot of success with this service, and they actually had a 30-day free trial, and that was enough time for us to kind of work out our dev workflow, get it into the plugin, do some testing, and then by the time we were ready to go live with it, it's like a flat $30 a month. You're not paying tokens so far so good on that service. We may talk a little bit more about the technical stuff on this on our technical deep dive, but so that's the languages. And next, let's talk about landmarks. So we have a new feature called landmarks, which we've
Brand
had.
new feature. We invented it
We invented
for the
it.
HTML spec.
Yep. So for
from
those
scratch.
for those out there, landmarks are semantic HTML tags, and they're part of the the accessibility tree, and it helps screen readers identify where in the page the users are, and they're important in the plugin, uh, so that we can identify where issues are, and that we can then at some point filter out issues to people with certain user roles. So since we're talking about it, maybe I should just demo it now, William. Let's see.
Yeah.
So what we've done with landmarks is so when you scan the page in the database, it'll actually store the landmark parent in which it's found in, and also, for the technical folks out there, a selector to help us identify where it is on the page. So now inside of the editor, so I've scanned this page, and now then in the accessibility checker meta box here, I can expand out the details tab for each issue, and you can see we now have a landmark column. And we've integrated this landmark with our front end highlighter. So if I click that, it'll open up the front end page, scroll down to the issue, and highlight it with a the pink dashed line. And we also have a label here where it says landmark complimentary, which is like an aside. And it highlights it so you can see where it's at. And then you can still run your front end highlighter to kind of highlight issues and move on like you normally would. So this is kind of our first step into creating more features inside the Pro plugin, where like say you have a user that's like an editor role, right? And editors can't really access they can't really access the global elements on the page. So you want to you probably want to filter those issues out and only show them issues that pertain to what's inside the content. So I can show a couple more while we're at it. So like this nav item, right? So if I was editing this post as a content editor, then I likely cannot edit this nav here, which is it's a navigation for the next and previous posts. So that issue is kind of noise to me because I can't really do anything about it. This is more like an admin role, or like a developer would have access to. So that is landmarks, and there's more to come in the Pro plugin as far as filtering out based on user role and adding this into our open issues and into our ignore log as well. You got any follow-ups on landmarks, William?
No, I didn't really touch this feature yet, but I'm looking forward to creating the ability to handle the filtering so that only editors are going to be able to access issues that they can correct themselves, which will be, a big usability enhancement for a lot of websites that aren't just one person running all the things. And that, most websites these days are more than one person, right? You've got the overall like owner of a website that might want to see all the issues, but if you have a content creator, they're only going to want to see a small subset that they can tackle.
Yeah, cool. So finally, we have links. We've made updates to our link improper rule, which the actual readable title of that rule is improper use of link. And where it was, what was the issue there, William? Can you describe why we had to add this?
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact system, but we discovered on one of the websites that we were auditing, they had tabs that were built with markup that maybe isn't ideal. They were using links with role reassignments as opposed to just, containers that are, or buttons that are, a roll of tab. So yeah, items with links with what do you call that? The hashtag, right? Href hashtag.
Yeah.
It's like an improper link, but with a roll of tab. Actually, technically, is valid semantics because the role is changed. Yeah, so markup just like this.
Yeah.
Once the role is assigned, this is no longer a link as such and should be treated as the role of tab as opposed to as the role of link.
So in previous versions of the plugin, this would actually flag as an improper use of link, correct?
Yes.
So so now I'll just say this so we can actually see it in action. So to kind of describe what's on the screen here, what I'm looking at is I'm in a WordPress post in the edit screen, and I just have a HTML block with some markup in it, and it's an ahref with a role equals tab, and the link just has a title of link with role of tab. So I scanned the page again, and it's not being flagged. There is another one, an improper link on the learn more link on the page, but that's a separate issue. So if I remove the role equals tab from the markup here, and then I resave the page, we will see that issue. So now in the details tab of the accessibility checker meta box, you can see that the markup that we had is now showing as an improper link. It's because we're using the hashtag on it. But what this fix does is this actually allows anchor links that are being used as tabs to not flag as an issue in accessibility checker. So that is an update to that rule. And then as far as links, let's see. So we've done some minor updates to the plugin, and the plugin's been around for nearly 5 years, and it's kind of amazing that we haven't added some of these things before. So we added some links to the let me pull the screen up here. So we've added some kind of quick links and making the plugin more accessible on the page. So we now have an admin toolbar link, which gives you a quick link over to settings and a quick link over to fixes. And this is available on the back end and the front end, which just allows you to jump to these quicker. And this is kind of just our first iteration of using this, and we will have more information in here. We plan to add notifications of new features or notifications of maybe accessible issues throughout the page. And then in the WordPress admin on the plugins page, we've added some kind of quick links to our documentation, to our support, to rate the plugin, and we've added, I think that's it, right, William? Yeah, those are some quick links. And what we're trying to do is we're just trying to sprawl the accessibility checker out into the WordPress admin to make things easier for you. Actually, I'm wrong. We added this settings link as well next to the plugin. So a quick link over to settings. And I love these when plugins have a settings link, because you inevitably install a plugin, you activate it, and then you're like, okay, where is this settings? Is it under tools? Is it under settings? Is it in the parent? And I'd rather just have a link here, just a quick link over to the settings. So we're doing these small things to try to make the plugin more usable. So that is, let me switch back to us. That's kind of the recent released features. We've demoed a couple of them. We want to demo translations since we haven't done that yet. Let me, William and I got pretty good at reading French through our testing. So let me go to settings and then switch the language over to French and hit save. So first off, you'll notice that accessibility checker doesn't get translated, and we kind of were a little verbose in our translation, adding translation functions to our strings throughout the plugin, and we did translate some of our branded names. So fortunately, in PTC, there's a glossary where you can define strings not to translate or what to translate those to. So now, when our translation files get created, then accessibility checker stays accessibility checker, and the same with like accessibility checker pro. And you can see here that I clicked on the accessibility checker welcome page, which has our stats and a lot of our links to documentation and stuff, and most things are all translated into French. And yeah, so a big thing that we ran into, and maybe William, you would want to speak to this a little bit, was uh, the difference between translating PHP and translating JavaScript, right?
Yes. So translating PHP is a pretty straightforward process. There's lots of documentation, articles. It works the same way it has always worked. Translations inside JavaScript, though, not so much. So the JavaScript translations for WordPress uses an alternative translation mechanism, JED, I believe it's called, or JED. Um, it is not the same as getText. It works very similarly, but the output differs. So when it comes to translating JavaScript strings, there is a couple of gotchas, so to speak. So first off, the translation system is different in WordPress. It's JED, which means it uses different files. It doesn't read directly from the PO or the MO files. It actually requires JSON files. And those JSON files need to be, or ideally are individualized for every single bundle that you have. So every JavaScript file that you include on the page ideally has its own JSON file. And even detecting strings inside of JavaScript files is a bit iffy because we all build our JavaScript. Well, most systems these days have builds in place that minify, uglify, compress all of your JavaScript. And a lot of these systems change function names, which means underscore functions, the translation functions that you expect, might be renamed. So by the time you actually run your scan across all of your code base to find all the strings, potentially that function name that it's looking for might not actually exist anymore. So we actually had to make modifications to our Webpack configuration file to ensure that they get preserved so that when we use WP CLI to scan our plugin to detect the translations and build the pot file so that those functions remain to be found. And yeah, it's that all of this is just phase one. Generation of a pot file is phase one of getting translations. Once you have that pot file, you have to translate it, which we use the external service. That external service gives you back PO and MO files, and from those MO files, you then need to generate your JSON strings. So it is a 3-step process to translate JavaScript as opposed to just one and done the way that it is in PHP.
Yeah, and what I'm showing on the screen now is the code base and these different types of files, like a PO file and the MO file, and the JSON files are what I'm showing here on the screen. These all live inside the languages folder. And kind of a technical thing is we don't package all these into the final build. We kind of pull out the .po file and only package the machine file, which is the .mo, and the JSON files to kind of keep the package size smaller.
So I actually do want to say that isn't actually true for the free plugin that we push to .org, because WordPress relies on the MO and the PO files.
Right.
But for the pro files, to save you having large download sizes, we don't include them as part of that bundle.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great point too. And like with WordPress, so what happens now? We have our own languages file inside of our plugin, even our free plugin, but there's also WordPress. Is this a conflict? How do those two work together? If German is translated by WordPress and then we have German translated by WPML, which one takes priority?
So in most cases, it is going to prioritize the languages that we have bundled in the plugin. And or ideally, we would like that to be the case because we have all of the strings translated. However, what I discovered is that if WordPress has a bundle distributed for a specific language, then dependent on some system configuration, maybe WordPress will prefer the less translate option. So
Yeah.
if we have German translated, it might be 85%. WordPress is going to consider that as close enough to full to deliver it as its own bundle, and WordPress will, by and large, prefer WordPress delivered translations over bundled. And there's some filters and some workarounds you can do to prevent that happening, but it's very much non-standard. The standard behavior is WordPress will prefer its own provided translations.
Yeah. So as plugin creators, we have to make a decision, right? Like we have to, if say we have German on GlotPress and it's translated at 70%, but our AI translations are 100% or 99%, right? Kind of, we would, it could even be a worst case scenario than that. What if the German is only translated 20%, right? And we actually wanted to prefer what we have because we actually have the translations. We could use that filter, right? We could decide to then kind of
Yes, override core behavior.
Override core behavior, and you have to make a choice on whether or not you want to do that. If you have a lot of activity on GlotPress around people contributing to translating those strings, and you have assurance that you will get pretty good coverage, then maybe you allow WordPress to kind of choose give priority to itself over what you have in the languages file. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the technical background on the translations. And so we did add, this is not necessarily a feature. So with every release, we try to put some features in, but we actually inevitably do a lot of fixing, which comes from, just internal, bug finds and from our support and things like that. So a little bit on the technical deep dive side here, William. This was a very interesting issue that came up with the latest release. Was we kind of ran into an issue with swapping from unique to a primary key in our custom WordPress database. So the accessibility checker has a custom database table, and we had a support client come in that was unable to get the database to generate. William, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the customer support request came in. Their database provider, so they're using DigitalOcean managed MySQL databases, which enforce primary keys on every single table using an SQL flag or MySQL flag, which a setting that was added in, I believe, MySQL 8 to force all tables to have primary keys. So what we did have in our system was a unique key, which internally MySQL will generate indexes backed by it because it knows that will be a unique key. But a unique key is not the same as a primary key. It is treated the same by us as the developers of this plugin, but MySQL gives priority to actual primary keys over unique keys in almost all regards. So for MySQL to be the most efficient it can be, all tables should ideally have at least one primary key. I guess so. This user came in with the customer support saying that they were unable to actually activate the plugin, use the plugin, because we did not have a primary key defined for our main database table storage. And the solution is to define that unique key as the primary key. It's an ID field. It is both unique and actual primary key. So yeah, we made that swap. It is non-user facing. I don't, in some simple benchmarking I did, it doesn't really seem to make MySQL measurably quicker, but at scale, like huge scales, this absolutely will be faster to query because this is a primary key rather than just unique.
Yeah, and this, and it's quite interesting too, because the kind of the age of the accessibility checker, right, being being almost 5 years old, and this not being a primary key the whole time. And I think we know who's to blame for that. Probably the guy that wrote the
Yeah,
code that generates.
we can't go back and look at who wrote that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
we won't pull up the blame on that. But it's worked, right? And this has never come up. And this is the interesting thing about plugin development, and is that as your plugin grows and it gets put on all kinds of systems, and as the systems that it's running on are actually maturing themselves, right? Like the things that come up, and this is less of a performance thing, I think, in this regard, but it's more of
Yes.
a technology advancing, right?
Yes. So by as a general rule of thumb, all database tables should have something that's unique about them, right? And that is generally the primary key. We had defined the key that is now primary just as unique, which was effectively the same for our purposes. But at the scale of a managed database host like DigitalOcean, right, they might have one server with 500 or 1,000 databases on it. It's very important for them that all of their indexing is as efficient as it can be. And so, at scale, this was a requirement, but at individual site level, the difference is negligible. But it's better for us to support the bigger enterprise use case and the individual site than it is to only support the individual site.
Right. Cool. So one feature that another kind of little fix that we did in the latest release was around our front end highlighter. And so in a few versions back, we went through a major refactor where all of our rules were kind of brought under the umbrella of Axe Core, and utilizing JavaScript for all of our page scans. And we had previously used PHP. The plugin started out using only PHP to parse the page and to evaluate for accessibility issues. But where that gets troublesome is that you're not really evaluating the rendered page. So over the years, we've been transitioning over to using JavaScript so that we can utilize a rendered page to evaluate. And we finally, I think it was 3 or 4 versions back, we took a deep dive and we translated all the rules over to JavaScript. And this kind of caused a little bit of issue for our front end highlighter. So if you go to a page that doesn't have any issues, the front end highlighter before would kick off a scan and it would use PHP to scan. And with that switch over to JavaScript, we kind of introduced a little bit of a bug, and I think we self-identified this bug, correct? Or yeah.
So partially we had self-identified it. So I actually believe someone posted about this in our Facebook group and
Okay.
expected that something else was at play. And as part of looking into what they expected was going on, we discovered that this actually was unable to be scanned by, or the scan could no longer be kicked off because we don't have the PHP scan that it was trying to kick off.
Right. And so what I'll do is I'll demo this once I can switch back to English.
Yeah, but I actually have the page up if you want to.
Oh, sure. I'll show your screen.
Yeah, you show me, so now I have it. So yeah, this is a page. It has these issues. So if I click this clear issues button, this is all zeroed out. Effectively, all of these issues have gone away.
So describe describe what page you're on. You were in the back end.
So I'm in the admin for the editor for a test post that I have in my local install, and where we have our results posted, we have the clear issues button. If I click this, we get the alert that says this will clear all issues for the post. So if I click OK, all the issues are cleared. So now I have the front end of that same post opened. And if I were to click on the front end highlighter right now, there's going to be no issues at all for us to see. But when I click this open, it said loading. Now it says it's scanning. And once the scan completes, there's the issues. I think it's the same number of issues, and they're now all navigable. Right, this page has just scanned, and it has scanned this actual page that I'm looking at. It hasn't spun up anything in the background. It hasn't, created a artificial or a ghost version of this page. It scanned this literal page now, as opposed to in the past we would always backend it with PHP and make a request on the PHP side to do the scan. Now we actually can scan this live page. There's no difference with what it sees here in the editor when I save this and the front end. They're exactly the same rendered page. And yeah, now there is results. If I come back to the editor and I just reload the editor, yeah, the issues are here. The page has been scanned. So yeah, the bug was this would never actually scan. It would just always be stuck, and the front end highlighter would just always say loading whenever you tried to open a page that didn't have scan results.
Yeah.
And there's two reasons why a page could not have scan results. Right, I cleared the issues in the editor. A page could literally never have been scanned, which is what I've just emulated. But this page could also not have issues. It could legitimately be free of all the issues that we would discover with our plugin. In cases like that, with the bug, the front end highlighter would never tell people that their page had no issues. It would just be stuck in that loading state.
Right. And it does a check to see if there are issues, and if there are issues, then it doesn't run a rescan for performance, right?
Correct. So now if I reload this page, it actually just requests the issues from the previous scan. This scan only happens if there's no issues to validate that this is a page with no issues. As we seen in my demo where I cleared the issues, it discovered this page does have issues, and thus they are presented. But if it doesn't discover issues, it tells you that, right? No issues found.
Right.
Is what this would say. I mean, on this this test site, I do not have a page right now that I know of that has no issues to demo that, because this theme is very old and kind of horrible.
Yeah, and this lays the groundwork for more front end scanning enhancements in the future.
Yes. So while this right now will only scan when there is no issues discovered on the page, we could have a button here in future that allows you to manually scan this, and that will be so on a site like this one, a test site, that's not very useful. But on a site that might have a front end page builder, being able to rescan right from the front end will be incredibly useful, because you might make changes. Like this could be one of those like page builders where I could edit this content right now, and if I edit that, these results would actually differ if I were to rescan it. So yeah, in future, probably will be a rescan button here so that front end editors can rescan their content as they edit it.
Yeah, and the accessibility checker has fixes, and if you hit an issue on this that has a fix, there you passed one. So you click the fix button, and you can enable a fix from the front end, where now we kind of prompt you to go back to the back end and rescan the page. We can in a future release, we can kind of wrap in our rescan into this and just automatically rescan the page in real time.
Yep. Whenever you click that, it will just rescan, and this number will immediately reflect the change.
Yeah.
So 12, one morning, I would have to visit the editor, reload the page.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, the way our fixes work is we don't implement fixes and just hope for the best. We implement fixes, and then we require the accessibility checker to scan and ensure that our fix actually worked. So now it's gone, right?
So it is not. So it's actually this one that. Oh no, this actually can't be fixed because this is a hard-coded widget. So it thinks this is the WordPress core widget. But it isn't. And that is just a symptom of how this
no, but that's a
local test page works.
That's a beautiful example of what I just described.
Yes. So it cannot fix it, and thus this is not going away.
Right. So, yeah, just to kind of sum that up, even if you enable a fix in our plugin, we will rescan and we will ensure that that fix worked, because that's a problem with programmatically fixing things, right? Is that not every website is created exactly the same. Not every piece of markup will behave the same when you apply JavaScript to it or you filter it with a filter. So we actually will recheck to ensure that these things actually are fixed.
Yeah, and in this case here, the misinformed label, this cannot be fixed because it doesn't have any data surrounding this to know what to actually label this from.
Right.
It has a type field with an empty placeholder. There's no tail. It does have a name, but the name is nondescript. So yeah, this issue cannot automatically be fixed by error fix because this is just a hard-coded input. It's not an actual search box.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So here, let me show this. Dave had another comment about the roll tab. He said, "Oh, nice. Yeah, a roll equals tab is not an improper use of a link."
I mean, it is sort of uncommon, but it is valid. And we did already cover cases where role equals button on a link was also technically valid use.
Yeah.
And, we would not flag that as an issue. Even though I think if you're, making a link be a button, maybe just use a button. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's
I mean,
technically valid.
that's definitely the answer, but in an
Yes.
effort for the accessibility checker to keep getting smarter and refining it, I think this was a good move, and it'll help reduce some noise and maybe what would look like a false positive. It kind of is a real, but it's kind of one of those weird ones where you have to decide, well, it's actually an issue, but like in the context of them building tabs, the screen reader, you test it and the screen reader would actually read out properly in that
It would.
case.
And yeah, while the markup might look weird to a person reading the HTML, it's semantically correct. And the screen reader or any assistive technologies really is going to understand exactly what that element, what its purpose is.
Hmm.
The markup implies it's a link, but its purpose is very different.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So that
And
kind of sums up the new features. Did you have anything else, William? On
yeah, actually, can you pull my screen back up? Actually, I did want to show how we're validating these. So we actually, as a nerd and a developer, we've actually created these test suites using Jest. So if we look at this markup here, this is an anchor tag with a roll of tab. And if I run this test, this code here will pass, right? This is the last one, passes with roll of tab. If I were to remove this roll of tab, press this play button again, it'll run these tests and see this one here fails. So we've actually, this is how we're validating that what our rules are doing is correct with what the expectation is. So our expectation is that this passes and does not get flagged by our test, and rerun the test. That is true. And
Mhm.
when I was developing this, or when this was discovered, I added this test case, and this test always failed, which meant when I was working on the link improper rule, I can make edits to this check. And the edits actually were quite simple. It's literally just right here. But if I temporarily delete that for a second and rerun this test, this was the initial state. So what we did, so this is, test-driven development. We've created the test with the markup that we expect to pass, but it doesn't. So then you have to make edits to your rule check code. In the case it was, simple, just add that and rerun the test. Now the
Right.
test passes. So we validated that this markup that we expect pass actually does pass with our rule. And then, beyond that, we actually will just literally come in to the editor and also test it right here. But being able to manually
Mm-hmm.
verify them very quickly with these automated tests helps a lot. And, we have these tests for almost every single role that we have in our plugin.
Well, let me ask you that. Why do we need to? Why are we writing tests for our rules if we're using Axe Core?
Well, what Xcore does is sometimes the minimum. And so X very much leans towards never providing a false positive. But what we actually lean towards is providing the right information in the context of, first off, into the context of WordPress. We're blissfully aware that WordPress does things a little bit differently to what the expected norms of the web are. So in some cases, we actually know it's fine in WordPress because there's additional things. We want to test like spacer blocks, for example. Xcore flags those spacer blocks because they have ARIA hidden, right? But we are aware that ARIA hidden is the correct markup for a spacer block in WordPress, and as such, we skip over that, right? So the point of us writing our own tests is that Xcore doesn't always do exactly what we want or exactly what we expect. Sometimes it actually does the opposite, and but like sometimes the rules or the violations it returns for its rules, we actually want those violations because discovering those violations implies other failures or, other passes. And we do have one rule in our plugin where we actually had to invert the logic that Axe sends back. Axe will send back incomplete results as opposed to violations in certain cases, and when it returns incomplete results we actually know that that is a failure for the content that we're checking. So
Right.
yeah, all that to say is that Axe does not necessarily give the exact answer that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Axe will do its best to never provide a false positive. We don't always agree that that is correct. Sometimes we will accept a false positive in exchange for avoiding false negatives. Like
Right.
we would rather catch more things than miss things.
Right, because we're building a tool that is going to aid in actual auditing
Yes, we're
and
not building an automated system to fix all the things and tick a box off on some report somewhere. We're building software that we want you to be using every day while you're making content, and as part of that, we want you to sometimes have to manually validate something that for your own reasons or for our like if we're uncertain, we're going to ask you to manually check something, right? And I would rather present that information to you. Whereas Axe ethos is that they're uncertain, they're not going to say anything,
right.
and that is fine for the purposes of auditing and reporting, but it's not fine for the purposes of content creation. As someone's creating content, tell them all the information you have. Is
Yeah.
kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, so we've heavily extended Axe Core and created lots of our own custom rules and checks that kind of are in line with what we had on the PHP side that we needed to kind of refactor and port over so that it wasn't the reports inside of your dashboard when you're using accessibility checker weren't jarring, or that we didn't open Axe Core up, then open the floodgates up and give you everything that Axe Core can check for, because that would be so much noise. We've carefully curated what we pull in from Axe Core and what we add to Axe Core, and where William said we modify, we invert the results to get what we want, or we extend certain rules to have additional checks in there as well. So we've got our fearless leader here, Amber Hines. She said that is a great summary of our philosophy. Thanks, William. You know what?
Yeah.
I'll say thanks, William, too. That's 2 thanks from.
Well, that's good coming from my boss and my other boss.
Yeah, and Dave also replied that that's really good information.
Yeah, I very much disagree with the never provide false positives, right? I think provide as someone's creating the content, it is not overwhelming at all for them to get a couple of false positives or a couple, whereas if you're scanning an entire website, maybe you don't want all those false positives. But as you're creating the content, I think it's a non-issue, right? 4 additional issues manually verify versus potentially missing dozens or hundreds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Cool.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of time, but I want to run through this. We've talked about the features that we've recently released, and we've talked a little bit of nerdy technical talk about those. But let's tease a little bit what's coming for Accessibility Checker. So I'll grab the first one here. So we got better rules for help inside of the plugin UI. So we're going to have WCAG criteria, conformance level, and the priority of the issue displayed coming up in a future release, which I believe is not the release coming out next Tuesday, but the release 2 weeks from that. So here in about 2.5, 3 weeks, we should have that. And this is just better help documentation to help you understand what the issue is and help you on what steps to take to remediate it. And this kind of pulls some of our documentation into the plugin to help give you more context to where to focus and what is the most critical issues to work on. And another feature that's coming that has been in our roadmap for several years is that we will have the ability to add a comment to global ignores. So currently, if you go in and ignore an issue on a single post edit page, you can add a little comment, right, on why you're ignoring this issue. Well, we haven't had that for our global ignores, and so we have now added that, and we're in the final testing stages of that, and that should be rolled into the next release. And landmarks. So I talked a little bit about this earlier. Our landmark location enhancements. We're going to be implementing filters for those based on user role, and we're going to be creating user capabilities for that as well, so that we're not just going to attach it to an editor. We're going to create a capability that if you're using the user role management plugin, that you can attach that capability to any user role that you see fit, and you'll be able to define which landmark locations are global and which ones are not global. And a big feature that we're working on that will be coming out, and this one has been on our roadmap since the beginning. And William, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so this one is archive page scans, or more genetically, all taxonomies effectively can now, or will in the near future, be able to be scanned. This, opens up the door for, first off, archives, but in addition, this sets the gates, things in place to be able to scan everything that is not a post type, because part of the way our plugin is built, post type is the underpinning group organization, and with moving to scanning the archive pages, the changes we're making is going to decouple that. So no longer will the content type require to be an actual post type. It will be, archives or taxonomies. We can scan taxonomies, but I've worked on websites where they have fake content, so content that's accessible but comes from the database that isn't a post type. Pretty soon we will also be able to scan those pieces of content and store those results, present those results. So yeah, that's exciting movement to come. It has been a long time coming on the archive scanning, but there was a lot of blockers in place that have finally been unblocked by work we have previously been working through. So yeah, soon. Not the next release, probably the one after.
Yep. So that's 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
So yeah, that's a huge feature, and it's been something I think we've been promising this feature. I think we have it listed on the website somewhere for quite a while, and I think this will be a great addition to the plugin to get these archive pages, which are dynamically generated. I don't want to get too technical about it right now. We're doing a technical deep dive on this when it comes out, but like our scanner utilizes post IDs or posts that live inside the post table, and archives are actually dynamically generated and they don't live anywhere. So that creates quite the technical challenge. And William and I sat down and we went through it, kind of different options that we could use to try to do this. And I believe we've come up with something fairly clever that will allow us to scan these. And we want to be mindful too when we implement this, not to create a bunch of noise again, right? And so we're trying to make it a little intelligent where it can identify templates rather than just this is a taxonomy term. So like if you have a taxonomy with like 1,000 terms, right? We're going to scan 1,000 terms. Just like that's a lot of noise. It's basically going to be the same issues on every page. But if we can somehow determine how many different term templates are being used and only scan a sampling of each of a term, like one term of each template, that would allow our full site scanner to remain performant. We could actually add a setting that would allow you to scan all of them if you need that for compliance reasons. But we're doing a lot behind the scenes to try to come up with something that adds this feature in and does it in a performant way that isn't disruptive to the current scanning workflow that we have.
Yeah. So in a standard WordPress install with any of the default themes, we're actually only going to have categories, tags, and they're not going to have custom templates. So that's two things to scan. But we will almost always scan two of every item. So like for example, we will scan two categories. We will find a category that has the most posts, and we will find a category that has the least posts. And you might have a category with ideally none. So we might scan three, but at a minimum, we're almost always going to scan at least two, the one with the most, the one with the least posts, to make sure that, a zero post, or make sure your pagination's fine if you've got a post, a category that has 10,000 posts in it. But yeah, I think we can't by default scan every single taxonomy. I've worked on websites where there are more tags than posts, right? Like that's not an uncommon situation. You write one blog post, you might add 10 tags, and you continue to add 10 tags on every blog post. They stack up. So yeah, probably two. At minimum one from every single taxonomy, one from every single template, but at least two from every single taxonomy as well, because maximum, minimum.
Right. Cool. So those are some of the upcoming features that we'll be talking about in upcoming episodes. So we are scheduling these live streams to happen bi-weekly. So these will come out in the weeks opposite of our releases. And so that the next one will be in 2 weeks. That is our languages, landmarks, and links, and some other fixes in between. It'll be interesting to see if we can come up with a nice alliteration for every live stream, but maybe not. So I want to encourage you to check out the accessibility checker. If you haven't already, you can go to equalizedigital.com/accessibility-checker. You can download the free plugin from there, and you can also get information about purchasing our premium plugins there as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Equalize Digital on X, Steve Jones Dev on X. You can go to equalizedigital.com and contact us there with any feedback on the plugin or any questions you may have. And we look forward to chatting again in the next live stream. See y'all later.
See you. Thanks for being here.